patterns repeat themselves. Like, it's easier to say history repeats itself, but it is true, and it's so rewarding when you see it in the data.
What is CoStar and STR for our viewers?
STR serves as kind of the scoreboard and the umpire for the industry. And by virtue of having that position in the industry, because we work with 92,000 hotels globally, we're able to give valuable, actionable insights.
How do you convince a hotelier who says that I know the market already, I don't need data?
Very simple. Just ask them 10 questions on their market. 9 out of 10 times you'd be surprised that a person who says they know the market, not really.
Let's come to some fun stuff. Since you have a 360-degree view of Indian hospitality, if you were to open a 5-star hotel in a metro, would it be a Taj, a JW Marriott, or a Hilton?
I can at least provide some clarity on what I would think is factors to consider before choosing a brand. In India, it's a very clean trickle-down effect. What that means is, so luxury upper upscale will follow a pattern, then you see upscale, upper mid-scale follow the same thing, and then mid-scale economy does the same thing.
Give us an example.
Take, for example, right now.
What would one city be which you would like to open a hotel in India?
Whew. Can I pick outside of India?
One actionable intelligence for a customer from STR and for a hotel owner.
I'll start with a customer for sure.
Do you think that AI is going to disrupt STR in a massive way?
Hope my boss doesn't watch this, but I can do 10x the work that I used to be able to do without AI. Now with.
What do you see as the biggest challenge for Indian hospitality?
I think
today we have someone very interesting with us. We have Karan Mahesh, who's a dear friend. He's leading sales for STR in Asia and South Asia and
and Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia and India.
Yes.
We want to get some great insights into the market, and we look forward to having him on the podcast.
Awesome. Firstly, thank you, Anant. I've watched a few of your podcasts, of course, and I'm a huge believer in a podcast because it opens up conversations more than just scripted stuff, I would say. So, honor, pleasure, all mine to be here, and hopefully can contribute to whoever's watching.
Lovely. So, why hospitality? And tell us from the roots.
It's a funny story. So, all my life, I wanted to be, and not because that was the right thing to do as an Indian family, but I wanted to be an automobile designer. And cars really fascinated me. And I'm not going to lie, a bright-ish student academically as well. And until my 10th standard in Bangalore, and my schooling was there, my favorite subjects were physics and math.
Which school did you go to?
Bishop Cornell's, boys' school. I have to say that. And then after that, I chose to do state level, or PUC, as you call, pre-university college in Bangalore, in Christ University, only because I could get a higher cutoff to get my engineering seat. And then I did my engineering entrance exams. I went for tuition separately for that. I got a merit seat through the state level entrance test called Comet K. And then there's a CET, which is a common entrance test for engineering. I did that as well. Got a merit seat there. Then I also tried doing AIEEE, which is All India Engineering Entrance Exam. And I did fairly okay. It was some 1 lakh rank or something. But given India's scale, that's pretty decent. And then my parents were really happy. And then I come from a family where my father is an excellent cook. And my mom hates cooking. She can cook, but she doesn't like it. So I still remember this, and I enjoy cooking myself, and that drew me towards the hospitality industry. And that was my first draw. And I remember one day just sort of, I wouldn't say breaking the news, because I feel it's a good thing in retrospect, but I told my dad I want to do hotel management. And at the time, my father's always been working for the same company, which later became a JV with Mitsubishi, and he's an engineer himself, and he was in Mysore at the time, leading a plant and manufacturing division there. So he said, you come to Mysore, I want to talk to you. I was scared. And I went, and I spent 3 or 4 days convincing him in spurts why I want to do hotel management. And food was my first draw. And he said, okay, you do what you want, but I'll choose the college you go to. And turns out he picked Vaksha and Manipal. And I've heard the wild and the great side of of Manipal before that. I was fine. I was okay. I was happy. I was at least getting to do what I wanted to do. And one thing led to another. And now we're here. So
How was your experience at Manipal?
Manipal was awesome. I met my now wife in Manipal as well. She was in the same batch. And uh, academically, I'm ever so grateful to Manipal because it's kind of similar to a multicultural metropolitan within India, which also adds value because it is everyone in the same wavelength, almost same age group. You have many thousands of students coming in every year, so you see new faces, and many thousands exiting every year as well. So it's a very dynamic crowd. And before that, all my life, I'm a Tamilian born in Kerala, brought up in Bangalore. So I've had three of those states covered, and I wasn't as exposed to anywhere outside of or north of Mumbai, I would say. So Manipal was a real learning for me from that perspective, and it opened out different cultures within India to myself as well. And my wife now is from UP, but brought up in Calcutta. So
Where in UP, Shiva?
Bareilly.
Oh, so we are from Varanasi. That's why I asked.
Yeah, right.
You socialized after Manipal did an internship with IHCL, then you went to ITC. Was moving to ITC a logical choice because of the program at Manipal, or did you see a
Yeah,
cultural
so
fit?
of course the Welcome Group Institute's own. I'm part of ITC primarily, so they get first pick on who's the college draft, if I can say that. But no, so when I taking a step back for those 4 years while I was in Manipal, I had small spurts of internships. I was very lucky to early on realize that I'm more attracted to the strategic management, sales, revenue kind of side of things, and operations is not a fit for me. Culinary arts was what drew me towards the industry, but having seen it from the inside, I'm not saying it's a bad place to be in, but it was just not cut out for me. And it's not something that I saw myself doing in the long term. So my internships also with IHCL, which you brought up, was the first ever internship that I had. And in Bangalore, it was at the time the Taj Residency, which is now the Vivanta by Taj MG Road. I interned there and I had a night shift. The reason I sort of picked that place is also because it's a 2-minute walk from my house. So I used to go there for a month, 45 days, I think, my first internship, did night audit, sat through check-ins that came in the night, mostly foreigners, international travelers who checked in the wee hours of the night, and then got exposed to that. And I then realized that it's very interesting, but it's just not something that I saw myself doing. So cut to placements in Manipal and Vaksha. My batch was an experimental batch and it was the only batch I think till date that was at that because normally you have a 6-month internship across the 4 operational departments, and then you sit for placements in your last semester of college. And it's a 4-year degree there. My batch, they decided to switch things around and said, your 4th year, first semester, you sit for placements. And then the last 6 months of your batch or of your degree, you do an internship. So I've actually never interned in operations at all for more than those 45 days because I sat for placements and I wasn't targeting any company to get into. But the first recruiter that came in or company that came in was ITC because they have first pick from Vaksha. And we were 4 of us who were part of the same friend circle in college that decided to sit for those placements. And we had 8 or 9 rounds and we were asked to choose from the beginning itself which department management training program you want to sit for. Is it operations? Is it sales and marketing executive training program? Or is it revenue management executive training program? I sat for sales and I ended up clearing that. And in that year, they also said you cannot, my college had the rule of once you've gotten placed, you either accept the offer and not sit for any other interview, or you don't accept the offer and then you can sit for other interviews. But I think you could get 2 offers. But this was the first company and I just got in and never looked back. So that's how I got into ITC.
Sales and revenue there as a executive?
Just sales. So my first posting, so I entered ITC HMI and in Gurgaon. So I was here for about 18 months for the executive training program. Part of the SMETP executive training program, sales and marketing executive training program. My first posting was in Bangalore. So there I was doing corporate sales. I was supremely grateful to the person I was reporting to there, Miss Rajani Pillai. She's still with ITC, and she is also from Baksha, alumnus of Baksha itself in Manipal. And she was my first boss, and a lovely one at that, and still in touch with her. And there was this other colleague, or at that time a senior manager who I was shadowing, and we were doing corporate sales. And I was all things fell in place, and this person who I was shadowing left the organization. And I was shadowing her for about 4 months, and had gotten to know the teams at the biggest corporates like IBM, Amazon, Cognizant. Her territory was the whole of North Bangalore, and we were working out of ITC Windsor. And for the interim that they were going to backfill her position, I continued handling these massive corporates, and they were the biggest room night producers for ITC. And then we changed to a cluster role. We started handling ITC Windsor and ITC Gardenia. And then there was another hotel, the Welcome Hotel Bangalore, which was added to that role as well. So luck had it that I was handling the biggest accounts as a management trainee. And then things changed because I did something that I think worked very well now that I think of it, that I got posted to the headquarters then started doing sales strategy.
At ITC Green Center?
Yes. So what happened was we had to do a project for ITC HMI, the management training program. And because I was handling the likes of IBM or Cognizant or Amazon, etc., they're all big GDS-driven bookings. And I decided to do a project on how I can drive better demand for a GDS-driven city like Bangalore, or take, for example, Hyderabad, and did a small little project on that, and got exposed to multiple analytical softwares that exist in the market on that front. And then I was using those tools that
used ideas.
No, it's not revenue management related at all. Like looking, and the best part was that I feel more than anything else, my takeaway from that was to sell your relationship and not the hotel. Because we had cocktail hours for the club members in ITC, and I used to voluntarily go there from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. after work hours, typical work hours, and sit and interact with guests, and occasionally have a drink or two myself with them if I'm close to them. And sometimes you do end up seeing the same person thrice a week, and then you start to understand why they're actually coming to your hotel and not choosing another hotel. And this was very rudimentary sales, but I think that's what taught me a lot. And I did that project, and then I really like Excel. So I love using Excel. It's my favorite software in the world. I'm grateful for Microsoft for that. And I made a bunch of fancy charts and graphs. And that time there still is micro printing. So I micro printed out about 5 booklets, small booklets of 25, 30 page booklets of my project. And then I had my final interview at ITC Green Center for when they decide, are you now graduating or not, and where your posting is. And of course, my choice posting was Bangalore, because that's home for me. And I'd given Bangalore as an option that I wanted to choose. But luck had it that I went to the interview. I gave the projects out. No one really paid attention to it at the time. But later, after a week, 2 weeks, the interview went well. They didn't talk about where you want to go and everything. They just spoke about the experience. 2 weeks later, the posting came, and it said Gurgaon. And at the time, ITC did not have a hotel there. So I was like, are you sure? Because there is no hotel there. What am I going to do? Then I got to understand from the then principal there, I think Dr. Swarup Sinha is his name. He said it's the headquarters. It's the ITC Green Center. Greenest building in the world, etc., so on. So I was like, wow, what am I going to do there? And then I got to understand that it's sales strategy and optimization. So from a complete external facing role, where I was chatting with procurement heads and guests and selling the hotel and corporate sales of the hotel B2B, I went on to fully inward facing sales role where I'm now looking at numbers and charts and graphs and trying to figure out patterns within that data. And then I was just a management trainee turned graduate at the time, and I was questioning directors of sales and marketing for luxury hotels on their strategy and trying to identify gaps in what their strategy is and where they can plug those gaps. So it was
That's
serendipitous
nuts.
that
That's such a young age. You are the youngest member I've actually had on the podcast. And I wanted to, but I think you'll have the maximum knowledge because you're looking at it from a 360-degree view with
grateful
STR.
for that. Yeah.
So how did the transition to STR happen, and what's the difference now? I understand you're living in Singapore. So how is it living in Singapore and shuttling between family here and there?
I think the podcast will go on for 3 hours if I say the whole thing. But I mean, long story short, I'd say as part of my role in ITC for sales strategy, I had a fantastic reporting manager as well. And the heads of sales were awesome. No looking back. I was part of 3 or 4 or 5 pre-opening projects as part of the core strategy teams for those luxury hotels as well and across the country. And one of the key responsibilities that I had, which took up about 30-35% of my time, was STR data for the entire chain. So I built internal dashboards, which made it easy for the ExCom and the management committee to read and actionably take insights away from STR reports. And in my first week at the headquarters, we had an STR renewal agreement meeting, which now I conduct. But at that time, it was way above my pay grade to add any value to that meeting. So it was my first time as an observer, silently just working around it and sitting by the sidelines, watching what STR's value add is. And that was my first week. So the first exposure to what a person at STR really does. And then apparently, so 3 years later, I get a call from the same person who said, hey, I'm going to be moving internally from my STR role to London for STR itself, but it's another role, which means my position becomes vacant in Mumbai in STR. So why don't you give it a shot? And if you want to apply, then here's the link. It's online, and it's on LinkedIn, and you can apply. So my first question to him was, why did you call me? And over the years, those 3 years, I was interacting with him. He was a key point of contact, right? So as an ITC representative, I was interacting with him. I was ITC to him. He was STR to me. He said, my first meeting that I had with you, you walked me down to my car, which to drop me off as a gesture. And I remember you mentioned that you were really impressed by STR's data. And if you ever feel that there's a good opportunity in STR, if you think I'm a good fit, let me know. And that 3 years later translated to him calling me. And then we had STR as a fair recruiter. And my now boss is still the boss that hired me 6 years ago at STR. And he went through the interview process and we had 2, 3 or 4 rounds. And now I'm here.
Lovely.
And then Singapore, that's a long story. But it's taught me a lot. And my career in STR started off in Mumbai. I was there for 2.5 years. I remember still that I signed my contract with STR. I was supposed to sign my contract the same day, but my manager, Matthew, he called me and said, hey, we've been acquired. and you're not joining STR anymore, you're joining CoStar. And I still remember that I had no idea what CoStar is now. I'm just getting to learn the ropes with signing a contract with STR. And now I hear about this American listed company.
What is CoStar and STR for our viewers? Let's dumb it down even before we get into it.
Okay, I've tried this explanation in multiple ways to dumb it down rather. And then I'll explain what we actually do as well from a technical standpoint. But since we're in India, I'll give you an example of cricket. So say you and I are in opposite teams and we're playing a test match and your team scores so many runs, my team scores so many runs, and 3 days in, none of us are keeping the score. What do we do? How do you know who's performed better? Or how do you know how many runs is required to win, or how many wickets are required to take down the other team, or whether one innings is over or not? So the best way of simply dumbing it down and putting it is that STR serves as kind of the scoreboard and the umpire for the industry. And by looking at that, you have an idea of where you stand, what's required to win, and what your competition's doing. So that's the dumb version of it, or the simpler version of it. At the technical side of it, very simply, what we do is we collect data from hotels. And in the sense, the hotels report data to us from on their performance. So that's top line, bottom line, historical, forward, everything. And by virtue of having that position in the industry, because we work with 92,000 hotels globally, we're able to give valuable, actionable insights to the hotels in return on what's the market doing, where do they stand within that segment or market or class, and then they can get more granular and look at competition insights and really strategically make decisions from a macro perspective, but also on a daily tactical basis, take better decisions. So we're a data company at the core of everything. And I've been in that privileged, grateful position to really have a detailed view into the industry, but also by the sidelines. I have a bird's eye view, but it's very detailed a view. So that's been something that I'm eternally going to be grateful for.
What is
That's
CoStar?
Now, CoStar is a commercial real estate data company. So they primarily, they're listed in the New York Stock Exchange. STR was earlier a family-owned business. They acquired STR in 2019 in October, around October, and they're a publicly listed company. They then got part of the prestigious NASDAQ 100 index, the S&P 500 index. Commercial real estate is office, retail, multifamily, flex, industrial, so on and so forth. They track all of those commercial real estate assets across primarily the US, UK, and Canada. And hospitality was, I think, a $7.5 trillion asset globally at the time of acquisition. And it only made sense for CoStar to add the intelligence of hospitality into the realm of commercial real estate, which they already so well owned. But that was again in the US, UK, and Canada. And now STR was a global business, and it made sense for that acquisition from a strategic standpoint. So that's what CoStar does.
You were mentioning that you got the job in Mumbai, and then how did you move to Singapore, and how did that happen?
When I was recruited to represent STR, I was recruited as an account manager. At the time, we had a separation between account management and business development. I was more on the account management side of things. Based in Mumbai, then there was just two of us leading the region of Central and South Asia at the time. So it was India, Sri Lanka, Maldives primarily, and then you have parts of Nepal, Bhutan, etc., Bangladesh as well. And that was the region we were looking after. And then the colleague of mine who was doing business development moved to CoStar in the UK. And I then wore a dual hat for a while of doing business development and account management. And then my boss came for a conference to India, and they were planning to backfill that position, but they were toying with a few thoughts. And then for a year or so, they realized that I have a good hold of the industry and have good networking connects in the conference that we were part of. So they said, okay, you carry on doing what you're doing. And when we find the need to hire someone else, we'll do that. I said, okay. And it was challenging, but it was a new challenge for me. And I like change and challenges. So I pursued that. And then 1 year later, I got a call from my manager this one day. And he said, there's this option that we're toying with. And we want to say this and propose this option to you and give you a few days to think about it. You don't need to give me an answer now. But how do you evaluate the idea of yourself and, of course, your wife as well, moving to Singapore and doing exactly what you do, but based out of Singapore? And that's it. That was the only sort of initial question that he asked me. And then we kept contemplating about it. And I remember I took Naina, my wife, out for dinner that day, and in a calm setting told her that this is what's been given to me on the table. Do you feel that it's the right thing? And both of us were super anxious but excited. And it was an opportunity that doesn't come your way very often. And eternally grateful for that, because it's not easy to shift someone from one location to another, let alone one country to another country. And the other alternative that STR had was, thank you for your service, and we'll probably recruit someone in Singapore locally, because we're not planning to have physical presence in India for synergy reasons or whatever. And 4, 5, 6 months it takes to get your processes and visas in order. And Singapore doesn't make it easy to do that either for an expat. And rightfully so, they prioritize their citizens over outside citizens. And 6 months later, found myself going to Singapore and settling there. The worst part about all of this was when I got proposed this option to move, I had actually already booked my tickets as a tourist to Singapore for 10 days. And those were non-cancelable. So my wife and I ended up toying with that idea while visiting Singapore as a tourist for 10 days. And 10 days is a lot because Singapore is a small city country. But it gave us a very different, fresh perspective, because when you go as a tourist, you don't go with the intent of, hey, 6 months down the line, this is probably going to be home for a few years, right? Or for a long-term period as well. So it gave us a lot of different insights. And then we decided to take the leap, and it's worked out more well than not. And I'll come to the not part in a while, but it's worked out for me personally very well from a professional standpoint, for sure.
Let's hear about the not part.
So it's one of the, looking back, is it's one of the, only from a personal standpoint, one of the most difficult decisions I've had to take for 2 or 3 reasons. One, it keeps me away from family, and I'm a single child, and for different reasons, it's different. It keeps me away from family, which I'm very dearly attached to and I value over everything else. And little did we realize that it is supremely difficult for anyone to get a job in Singapore if you're not a Singaporean. And for about a year and a half to 2 years almost, my wife was, her company was very kind to allow her to work remotely for a while. But then 2 years down the line, we had to take the difficult but logical decision of, and we don't have kids, so we had to take the difficult but logical decision of her moving back to India. And she got a fantastic opportunity in Mumbai, and it didn't make sense for her to let go of that. And I absolutely love what I'm doing. So we took that call, and my wife and I have been together for almost 10 years, and 7 or 8 out of those 10 years have been long distance. So it's not something that we are strangers to, but it is difficult, right? And you're both working professionals, and but you are away from family. So now most of my time goes on holidays, either coming back to Mumbai, where my wife is, or Bangalore, where my folks are, my parents are, my grandfather is, or my wife's parents are in Calcutta.
Wow.
So wherever we can travel, we're pretty much counting our holidays to come back to India.
This must be extremely tough on your health, physical and mental.
It is, but I think it sort of helps you understand what you prioritize in life as well. And as you said, and luckily and thankfully and gratefully so, I'm not as old and we don't have kids, and it's not that our parents are very dependent on us yet, at least, and no one's getting younger for sure, but it's a lot of learning, but at the same time also a lot of clarity that you get when you take these decisions. And I believe personally that if you have to grow, you have to be okay with being uncomfortable and embrace change for sure. Because another thing is, I joined STR in December of 2019, and we know what happened in 2020, and it was a complete change and challenge there. I still remember I was supposed to go to Sri Lanka for a work trip on the 12th of March, 2020. And I was clubbing that with another friend's wedding as well. And I'd packed everything. And then that same morning that I was supposed to leave to Sri Lanka, my company announced that freeze on all travel. COVID is hit and it's more serious than we thought. So I said, okay, looks like it's a lot of seriousness that's going to happen. And I don't know how long this will last. So I packed 2 weeks worth of clothes from Mumbai and came to Bangalore. And that 2 weeks became almost 8 months, and saw me getting engaged in between that as well. And then a year later getting married as well. So yeah, change is very critical to, I think, growth, but also personally, I find the ability to not just embrace that change, but also be okay with being uncomfortable as a real enabler to your success personally.
Let's come to some fun stuff. I wanted to know that since you have, before we get into some data points, that since you have a 360-degree view of the Indian hospitality industry, right? So let's say if you were to open a 5-star hotel in a metro, would it be a Taj, a JW Marriott, or a Hilton?
Depending on the asset that you have, and you mentioned it's a 5-star hotel, I can at least provide some clarity on what I would think is factors to consider before choosing a brand. And I honestly don't own a hotel, so I can't even put myself in that situation. But as being from the position that I'm in and having an insight into the data, I think a few things are: what are the brands that currently exist in that brandscape in that location? That plays an important role. It can be favorable, but also unfavorable, because it can A, lead to better brand recall, but also B, lead to cannibalization of business, if that's a thing. And many brands have these SOPs built in as well on, if there is an X brand hotel, then within the next 1-2 mile radius, we cannot have another X brand hotel because it would eat business from each other. Or one could argue that it would actually play towards synergy as well. And if you're in a sold out market with high demand and big compression, then you can actually use that to your favor to then walk guests to the next door hotel of the same brand. We had a similar situation when I was in ITC as well, and I was part of the pre-opening strategy team for ITC Royal Bengal, which is right next to ITC Shonar. And both luxury collection, both extremely unique in their positionings, but it's worked out well as a complex. You're selling it as one hotel, but they're actually two very distinct properties. So yeah, that's one aspect. What's the existing brandscape? And then at the end of the day, if I put myself in the shoes of an owner, it becomes a lot also tied with emotion. And I feel that that's important, especially from an Indian context, because there are certain Indian and international brands or global brands that, or domestic and global brands or homegrown brands as well, which have a very high level of emotional connect. And I'm not taking names, but I think you know where I'm headed, but I'm not taking names. And I think that plays an important factor as well. And the last thing I would say is if there was one thing that a brand cannot control, but the owner can, is the location. And depending on where that location is and what the performance of the market is and whether there's compression, whether there's seasonality, every brand has a different strength that it plays to. So as an owner, if I were to do it, I would evaluate all of these and take a scientific call. But it is going to be my baby at the end of the day, that hotel. So I would want and wish the best for it. So then there is an element of emotion to it as well.
Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities in India are seeing growth primarily. What is the difference in the occupancies, ADRs, and if you can just reflect a little bit on
Sure.
difference.
So for now, as of where we stand in 2025, and now we get into the data side of things, and this is what I know for fact, as the data says, is so let's start by looking at India into three buckets, right? Let's take the big three cities, so Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. They have the highest single city inventory across these three cities, and Bangalore has the most, and followed by Mumbai and Delhi together. And then we have leisure, and let's just take a bucket called leisure, which say are the likes of Goa, Jaipur, Jodhpur, Udaipur, Himachal, for example. And then let's look at tier 2, 3, 4 cities, which we'll label as regional.
Can I ask you one question? When you say Delhi NCR, or only Delhi?
Just New Delhi.
Yeah, because Delhi NCR would probably have more inventory than
Yes. So this is just New Delhi. Not even Gurgaon included. Yeah. So leisure, regional, and big three. The good news and what's working for India is that demand is growing more than that of supply for at least the year-to-date period in 2025 in all of these three buckets. The highest delta that demand has is in regional markets. So that's exactly to your point, that there are more and more people traveling to regional tier 2, 3, 4 cities. And that also has to do with the fact that infra is improving and last mile connectivity is improving. And railways and state highways and national highways are improving. So all of that's leading to, yes, hotels also flocking for growth towards tier 2, 3, 4 cities. And I mean owners, operators, both. That's the highest demand delta. The second highest demand delta is for the, and when I say demand delta, I mean the gap between the excess in demand and that of supply. A second highest delta is in the big three, which is Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. And the least, but still demand faster than supply or more than supply, is in leisure. The interesting data point to this is what happens when you typically
demand is growing faster than
supply
in leisure.
In all three buckets.
All the
The highest is in regional, the second highest is the big three cities, and the third highest, but still positive differential, is in leisure. What happens when demand outstrips supply is rate growth, right? But when we look at rate growth, the big three cities have managed to grow their rate at about 15 to 16%.
Wow.
Regional and leisure have only managed to grow about between 2 and 3%. So that just goes to show the pricing power that these big three cities have and the importance that they will continue to have into the future as well. And it's not unreasonable to look at a decent hotel for 20,000 rupees right now in a Mumbai, Delhi or Bangalore. I'm sure you would agree. But 5 years ago or 6, 7 years ago, it was obnoxious to have those rates even during lean season. But now it's not. It's become normal trading levels for them. So pricing power wise, big three is much bigger and will continue to do that because there's always going to be that demand for those rooms. But that also on the flip side shows that regional markets have not yet gotten that pricing power that the big three cities enjoy, even though demand's growing much faster there compared to supply and relative to supply as against the big three cities. And leisure is unfortunately this year at least not doing as well for India for multiple reasons.
What would one city be which you would like to open a hotel in India?
Okay, what kind of hotel?
Could be any hotel. You could choose either of the three buckets.
Either of the three
buckets of India, and you could choose either of the segments. Could be a boutique hotel.
Okay, and when you say I'm opening a hotel, I own it.
You own it.
And
your key result area from that hotel is going to be the return on investment.
Okay, and how much money do I have?
Let's say you have typical hotel costs about 2 crores a key to build, so about 400 to 500 crores.
Okay, and this is now in 2025?
Yes, now.
Whew. Can I pick outside of India?
So you can definitely pick outside of India. I'd love to hear that.
Okay, no. So I think, in all honesty, in India, let me say from an Indian context, right? There's undersupply across the country as per many experts, but there's also saturation. And if I want more value per key, I would not do metro. Because construction cost is high, land cost is high, development cost is high, and financing is more tight and tighter controlled. So value per key is, I'm not going to do metro. But if I want absolute ROI and just focused from purely a financial position, and then I would probably pick Mumbai, Delhi or Bangalore. And from those three, for selfish reasons and because Bangalore is the highest growing market right now, I'm going to pick Bangalore. But I would have to be really careful with where that hotel is in Bangalore because it's hard to get past the traffic. But in Bangalore, the other interesting thing is it matters a lot, and it's only Bangalore that operates like this for some reason. And I can say this with confidence because I know the market well. It matters a lot as to which side of the road your hotel is. It's not just where it's located or which sub-region within Bangalore, sub-market within Bangalore it is in. It matters which side of the road it's in. For example, you take Manyata Tech Park, which is a region that I used to handle when I was in ITC as well. To get out from there and come to the other side of the road can take anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes if you're in peak traffic. Whereas if your hotel is on the left-hand side of the road, your access is 10 minutes or 5 minutes tops. Or even better if it's inside Manyata Tech Park, but that's a couple of hotels that exist there right now, right? So yeah, but it matters very much which side of the road it's in. So it's not market specific, but yeah, if that answers your question, if I want value per key, construction cost, development in mind, and financing in mind, then outside of the big three. And if I want just compression and demand and good ROI, then probably the big three.
Lovely. Tell us about Goa, because you talked about leisure. You said Jaipur, Goa, which was the third city you mentioned?
Yeah, so Jaipur, Jodhpur, Agra, Udaipur, Goa, Himachal.
Himachal,
That's
right.
kind of like what leisure is in India, right? I mean, big leisure
Largely,
markets.
yeah.
Largely, yeah.
Why is Goa struggling? And
So the interesting thing about leisure is, I'll answer that in another way. Why is Jaipur doing well? Because Jaipur's managed to surpass the traditional impression of just being a leisure destination. There's a lot of MICE that's happening. The convention center that's open there is, of course, helping the situation, but there's a lot of MICE, there's a lot of weddings, there's little new supply that's been added as well, which has raised the imagery of the destination also and it's made it more experiential. I myself went to Jaipur about a couple of months ago for another wedding, and that was great. But they managed to find new sources of demand in the form of corporate events, MICE, and it's a good drive-to market as well, and it's easily accessible. The expressways and infra are helping it. All of those exact same things have worked little to an unfortunate extent for Goa, for example. And let me elaborate on that. It's not like Goa's in the dumps. I'm not going to say that it's doing really badly, but there is a very definite blip in demand. I've been talking to a few people, and this is their view on this, that, and not mine personally, but it's their view that there is an element of Goa having overpriced themselves while initially coming out of the pandemic because they saw a lot of good demand.
revenge travel.
Exactly. And Goa was one of the earlier beneficiaries of that demand than any leisure destination, in fact, across the world. That was one. Two is cheaper destination to go to from any metro city in India from a flight connectivity perspective compared to a Jaipur. Even Delhi to Goa is cheaper than Delhi to Jaipur. Think about it, right? Even
I
if
didn't know this.
So we did a typical round trip analysis on flights, and flight prices are cheaper to Goa. And now Goa has its second airport as well, and that's helping flight connectivity and dropping the prices lower. The problem is, once you land there, what do? It's difficult to not have an Uber or an Ola, and I think that's changing as well. But for the longest time, it was controlled by unions. And then the third element was the local Goans themselves were really happy when they saw a drop in tourists, and that became, unfortunately, bad marketing for the destination as a whole. And I feel the last element to it is that there is a fraction of ambitious, higher disposable income travelers saying, I have the status of having gone to a Bali or a Bangkok or a Phuket or even a Sri Lanka, and why would I go to Goa again? Because I've been there 6 times in the past 5 years, for example.
What do you see? Goa ending at 4-5% lower occupancy, about 10-15% lower ADR at the end of this year?
Yeah, so rates are lower, and depending on where you're looking at, it's between 5, 10, 15, 20%, sometimes even 25% lower for some hotels. But I'll talk about the rates first. I don't think the rate decline is bad revenue management. I actually think it's good revenue management because rates are obviously going to be lower if you have lower occupancy nights. And that's been the case in 2025 so far. Most of your nights have been below 70% occupancy for the market. So rates are, of course, going to drop. But with that said, future on the books occupancy is about 3% lower right now than same time last year for Goa. And I feel we will end the year softer than the same time last year. But again, Goa has been a market that is very well known to pick up once it's fallen down and get back up on its feet. And I think it's only a matter of time that happens as well. So it's not like the market's going to lose importance. It's definitely not going to lose importance, but it's going to be a softer year this year for sure.
You were talking about a very, very interesting insight where you said that the group pricing, regardless of whether it's the wedding segment or not in India, is higher than transient,
Yeah.
which is not happening across the world. So can you shed more light on this?
So it's something that I would probably ask you to shed light on, but I'll tell you from a data perspective what it says, right? So I've looked historically, and this is very surprising. Traditional revenue management tells you that if you are making a reservation for a group or offering a rate for a group, it builds up and helps build up base occupancy, and then you layer on top of that with higher paying transient guests. So you give a group a better benefit of discount and benefit of pricing because They're giving you more number of rooms. Cut to 2022 onwards, group rates for the entire country have been higher than that of transient rates. It started off with weddings because, of course, after the pandemic, there were a lot of, or during the pandemic, there were a lot of weddings that got delayed in their celebrations. And they initially were willing to shell out that top dollar for conducting their wedding. And there was a lot of demand for that segment specifically. But drawing from that, now it's not just weddings that are more pricier than transient. It's MICE events as well. Like, I'll give you a real example. I was traveling from Singapore to Delhi for one of the conferences, and the conference website had a group rate that they had negotiated with the hotel. And luckily, 2 months before the conference itself, I booked my stay. But I went and saw the group rate. And then I happened to be a loyalty member of the hotel as well. So I just went into their website and saw the transient rate. And the transient rate was about a 1,500 rupee differential lower than what the group negotiated rate was. So I'm not saying do this, but it is
counterintuitive.
Yeah, and it's very unique to India.
Weddings were always priced higher than normal rooms because we always said it's a wedding date, because it's it has an occupancy plus. It's
F&B.
basically the pundits making us a lot of money.
That's true. Yeah, but tell me from your experience as well, and if I may, Anant, you tell me, are you seeing the same thing with your hotels?
Yeah, it's 100%. Because the thing is, what happens is that group bookings somehow inevitably are priced higher because of just the demand during those dates. Because group bookings are generally coming on weekends. Because we are predominantly leisure tier 2, tier 3.
Right. Tier 2, tier 3 is more weekends. You're right. That's the other thing, like in metros, and the data's fact to this as well. Yes, weekends are your absolute high occupancy group days, but weekdays and shoulder days are only about 0.5% to 1% lower than weekends for group occupancy. So, especially in the metro cities, what kind of demand is this? Yes, there's a lot of sporting events. Yes, there's a lot of corporate MICE coming back. But what else can you think of? It's crazy. But the other fascinating aspect to this is 2022 was about a 300-400 rupee differential positive on the side of groups compared to transient. 23, 24, 25 have been higher each year as a differential, and the spread is increasing. And 2025 was about 1,800 rupees higher per room night for a group rate compared to the transient rate for the same room night. So, yeah, I think it's creation of a new trend, and probably we're seeing the spread or bifurcation happen between group and transient.
And between India and the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
Do you see a shift away from homestays? Because do you think that could have also affected the Goa market in a large way? Because a lot of people have firstly started buying vacation homes and then...
Yeah, so we're facing a similar situation in the likes of, say, for example, Phuket, where residential condominiums are coming up, branded residences are also coming up, villas are all-time high there, and similarly in Goa as well. I think it extends to beyond one eating from another's plate. Like, I've gone to Bali a bunch of times, and depending on who I'm going with and why I'm going there, I would much rather pick a villa compared to a hotel, and vice versa. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. If I'm going with 10, 12 of my friends and we all want to stay together, there's very little hotel product or resort product that offers you the same convenience at a price point that a villa does. But at the same time, if I'm going with my wife or with just my family, and I would much rather stay at a resort than a villa, because I would value service and standard more than experience with spending time with 10 other people, right? So I think it depends on the occasion of travel for sure. But also what's different between homestays and hotels is economies of scale, right? Like, you can have one person taking 10 check-ins and doing a night audit and so on and so forth at the front desk and answering questions, picking up the phone at a hotel. But in a villa, you can't expect to just employ one person for doing that job, because that person probably do it once a day, then call it a day and sit at the table, right? So there's economies of scale that are different there, and service standards are hence different as well. Now, of course, you're seeing players enter the market which are standardizing services for villas and establishing that standard there. But at the end of the day, they're two different products. So yes, there is a little bit of cannibalization, I would say, with more people shifting to villas, but I think that's purely coincidental and causation rather than
My
anything
question
else.
was actually converse to this, because I was seeing that, are you seeing post the pandemic, a lot of people went and stayed in villas.
Right.
Now are you seeing the opposite happening, where people are going back to the hotels?
So I think it was more correlation that people chose villas after the just post the pandemic. But that was primarily because in a villa you're isolated from the rest of the people, right? So it's not one eating from the other's pie for sure. And in fact, if anything happened, villas have gained importance of being a preferred accommodation choice after the pandemic because of this. So that's causation. But the other part is just correlation because one thing led to the other.
Do you think sustainability, does STR have any sustainability index, and is sustainability playing a role in hospitality in terms of for the customer actually booking? Because all these, websites like booking.com, Make My Trip, etc. have those tags, but I don't know whether it actually has made an impact or not.
Yeah,
from a data perspective.
so the thing is, sustainability is hard to measure with standardization, because if I have a hotel and you have a hotel, what you do sustainably will be measured in a completely different way to how I would measure what I'm doing. And they may be completely two separate measures altogether. Like you may be eliminating plastic, whereas I may be recycling water. And you can't compare the two, right? Because they're both different things. So we don't have a metric as such to track it at STR. But there are companies that are doing fairly good job on entering this space, of course. But I feel the more important point is sustainability is changed from becoming a report card metric, good to have discussion point, to a mindset shift. And for sure, we're seeing this in the West play out in the favor of people willing to pay a premium for sustainably sourced or developed or efficient products. And it's only a question of time that slips into the East as well. And we are seeing some sort of higher conscious traveler choosing sustainability over a non-sustainable product. So yes, it's definitely gaining importance, but more so in the West, not here as yet. But I feel it's definitely moved beyond being a namesake topic at a hotel conference, for example, if you know what I mean, to something that is passionately discussed about and paid attention to. And that mindset is changing for sure.
So, looking into your crystal ball, what do you see as the biggest challenge for Indian hospitality over the next 5 years?
So I'll give you a bird's eye answer, right? And I think it's more human psychology driven than anything else. We're in a cyclical business. That cycle for the longest time was about 6 years to 6.5 years. So you have a 6 year up cycle and then a 4, 5, 6 year down cycle. And what's happened after the pandemic is we've stretched that cycle. So it's like a rubber band. And the rubber band plays two roles, right? One, you stretch it too much and it may snap. But also, when you stretch it too much, it loses its elasticity. So your downfall is also not that great. It's not that low, right? So I feel the biggest challenge is, from a psychology standpoint, going to be for hoteliers like yourselves to actually accept the fact that this business is cyclical, because we're riding a wave of 3 years of high double digit growth as well. And now we've just come down to maybe high single digit, but still high single digit, right? But I think that's going to be the most difficult challenge for the industry, is just to accept the fact that at conferences say that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. But even if it's a marathon, you can't sprint the entire length of the marathon, right? You have to slow down and jog. So we're still jogging. We're not stopping and calling it a day. But I think the hardest challenge, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is going to be for you to accept the fact that there is going to be slower growth.
I think that you are absolutely correct. And I also feel that people often say India has less supply, less supply, less supply. But if it had such less supply, you would see occupancies and ADRs going up much faster than they should have.
Yeah, that's a fabulous point. Like, take an example of London or a market like Sydney or Melbourne or something. You see compression happen so much more often in these markets, even though there is a lot more supply than what exists in India. Pockets are compressioning or facing compression in India, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if someone says that the Bombay has less supply, I can sit and understand that.
Yeah,
true. But seeing overall India market, I 100% agree with you that I am very positive about hospitality in the long term. By long term, I'm talking about a couple of decades. But in the short term, not so much, because the kind of supply which has started to come in, and with the fabulous listings which have happened currently, the market is going to, I think the effect of this will be felt maybe in the 27, 28.
Yeah, and there's also, of course, going to be a talent crunch is what everyone's projecting as well. But I feel that will take its more natural course. Let's first address supply, right? And to your point of listings, any listed company can only deliver shareholders value if they grow. And if you're in a compressed market already, and where do you grow? Tier 2 and tier 3. Now, what plays along with that is infrastructure. And what should play along with infrastructure is demand. But demand, if it does not keep pace with supply, and talent is a challenge, yeah.
Talent, I think, will be solved in a lot of ways, because I see that at least 15 to 20% reduction, further reduction in manpower happening.
Because of efficiencies?
Because of efficiencies which are driven through AI.
Correct. Yeah.
Obviously, see, the larger brands are more efficient. However, they also have a long way to go in India, because even their manpower ratios, India versus the West, is usually different. And that people say is because of the service standards.
Yes, for sure.
However, it's a mix of both. I don't see it as
mix of service standards and
mix of service standards and the entire work culture. But with AI, you'll become a lot more accountable.
But do you think from a traveler perspective, so I always question this, when I'm in India staying at a hotel, unfortunately, I expect more personalization. And I think India spoils you from a hospitality standpoint for sure, as a guest. If you're a guest, because of the whole Atithi Devo Bhava, and it's definitely a good thing, and that's what sets India's standard apart. But at the same time, if I'm an inbound traveler, for example, coming from the West, I may find it intrusive that someone actually takes my luggage to my room for me and doesn't allow me to do that. Or the fact that 5 people are standing in the lobby to welcome you with an Aarti Tika and a garland, when I'm just coming from a long flight and I'm jet lagged and I want to get to my room. So it's a balance, I think, of both, which is hard to maintain, but absolutely agree to your point. Efficiency is going to reduce the amount of manpower required.
Especially in the down the line staff, I think there's going to be a lot of efficiencies which are going to come in.
So if I may, and take the liberty to, I love AI, and I don't say this lightly just to bring in a word that is meaningful in a podcast these days, because I genuinely spend a lot of time, and I've completely transformed the way that I search, but also use AI to efficiencies in my job role. And I'm happy to touch upon how I do that. What are your thoughts on the boundaries crossing between when you use too much of artificial intelligence in your day-to-day operations, for example? When does it become non-personalized? And it's only a matter of time. I think you and I can already figure out if a message is AI-driven or if it is actually human-generated, right? And there are some typical words and lingo that AI uses. How do you see this playing out? More to the benefit, or when does it become non-human completely?
So honestly, it's going to be much more efficient from an economy and a premiums segment in India. I don't think that personalization, that level of personalization is going to really matter, because people are looking for a clean room, hot shower, good great pressure, the basics, the 4 or 5 basics, a nice breakfast, etc. Right? So all those hotels will become even more efficient. And for the hotels like the segment we operate in under Bridge, right? So we are using agentic AI right now for example, we're going to be using it for check-in, check-out, etc. But right now we're using it for your butler. So our agentic AI is called Tara. So Tara is a butler. So what happens is that when you're talking to Tara, so she, of course, we have a human interface at the back, but the human interface has become so much more efficient because it's the WhatsApp. And even people spending, because average spend, we just launched at Bridge, my average spend per night there is 60,000 rupees. Even that customer is loving the efficiency, because the responses are coming much faster. Yes. And the work is getting done much faster because it's getting logged. Now it's getting logged in my backend, right? Versus your phone, someone else's phone. So and the response time, everything is being tracked, and something which is being tracked end up delivering much more efficiency. And of course, we worked on it for 2 months to get rid of the hallucinations. But the fact that the cost is zero, I think technology is going to be like, it's going to be like table stakes.
Interesting. When you say cost is zero, of course, it's not your cost. it's the AI is, I mean, whichever model LLM they're
LLM, yes,
using, it's their cost.
absolutely, yes.
But how have you
Trained
trained
it.
this? Yeah.
So we've got our team to keep training on all the frequently asked questions.
Oh, okay.
So again and again and again for 2 months, they were just training.
Wow. Okay.
And it's just, and I, to be honest, I was a huge skeptic. You know, I thought that it's going to be like completely useless. People are going to be like, but when I saw the customers use it, I was pleasantly surprised because I always, so they will have that personal touch when they are going and you will need that extra manpower. But even, so for example, if I was operating a three staff to one room in Bridge, I might be able to bring it down to 2.5 or 2. I'm
Got
not
it.
saying I'm going to come,
Yeah.
but for a
yeah.
mid-scale and economy, I think it's going to be transformative because from a point of view, you might not even need a front office.
That's very true. Yeah, because your expectation also is less,
Much
right?
lesser, yes.
And yeah, I think that's important. But for a luxury hotel, for example, yeah, with expectations in India so high from a guest standpoint, I feel is more efficiency on the back end than in the front end guest facing.
So can you tell us one STR insight which you thought was like literally like you could never expect, which you have come across over the past so many years you worked there?
So I found this personally fascinating. It's probably something that you already know, but we call this a trickle down effect. And it so well plays out in India specifically. And it plays out differently in the West. So in the West, and it's basically bifurcation of class performance. So what I mean by that, bifurcation basically means there's separation in the tracks which different classes of hotels choose. In the West, we're seeing luxury, upper upscale, higher class hotels choose the ADR path, and the lower class hotels choose the occupancy path. But what I found fascinating and in India is it's a very clean trickle down effect. What that means is luxury and upper upscale lead the path of growth or decline. And it's so beautifully followed. And I geek out on data and patterns within it. So it's probably something that excites me, but not everyone who's watching this, for example, or going to be watching this. But yeah, it's a very nice trickle down effect. So luxury upper upscale will follow a pattern. Then you see upscale, upper mid scale follow the same thing. And then mid scale economy does the
Give us
same
an
thing.
example.
Take, for example, right now, luxury and upper upscale continue to grow on occupancy and rates. Or coming out of the pandemic, luxury upper upscale saw the first initial growth. Now, it can be correlation as well. I'm not saying it's not, because people preferred luxury upper upscale because they found it to be safer, more hygienic, blah, blah, blah. But then after that, it was followed by upscale, upper mid-scale, and now mid-scale economy as well. And then we're seeing that play out in cycles. And it's so beautiful to see data act in these patterns, because even right now, mid-scale economy is seeing the highest growth. But that's because it's delayed growth. And luxury upper upscale have seen it. So, and it's not just occupancy or rate, it's both. So it's a very nice trickle down effect. And it's just something that I geek out on when I look at patterns in data. But that's
Globally,
nice.
anything?
Yeah. So there's other interesting insight that a colleague of mine had shared, which is, I think, day of week patterns repeat themselves every 7 years, if I'm not wrong, or 6 years, if I'm not wrong. And if you look at the occupancy 6 years ago by day of week and how it's grown and compare it to 6 years later, I think that number is 7. You can just check with your own hotel's occupancy data. You'll see that it's in the same pattern of growth or decline. So that's another global thing. And it was a colleague of mine from the US who did this study, and it played out for India as well. And I presented one of those last year in one of the conferences. So patterns repeat themselves. Like, it's easier to say history repeats itself, but it is true. And it's so rewarding when you see it in the data.
So what you're saying is that the occupancy 6 years back on the same day is repeating itself.
I wouldn't say as granular as a day. Maybe take it as a rolling 3 days or rolling 7 days. But you see the pattern repeat itself. And it may be, again, correlation that it's the same festivity is falling, or every year you shift a day, right? So maybe it's that in a week there's 7 days. So every 7 years it repeats itself. But it's nice to see. And it's a good way to forecast what you're looking at. Like, for example, when you're looking at 2027, 2020 is probably a bad year to look at occupancy for sure. But look at maybe 2014, 6 years before that or 7 years before that, and look at patterns that repeat itself. It's quite a nice way to forecast.
One actionable intelligence for a customer from STR and for a hotel owner.
For a when you say customer, what do you mean?
Customer means if I had to book So basis the STR data, how do you...
Oh, that way. Okay. Okay, understand. So I'll start with the customer for sure. When you look at forward occupancy on the books, it's still very clear that people like to plan their vacations much ahead of time compared to their conferences or meetings. So you're looking at markets like Agra, Jaipur, Udaipur, Jodhpur, etc., have as high as 45-50% on the books business already booked out for the next 90 days on average. So that's great. Next 90 days, average business on books is already at about 45-50%. So for a customer, if you're booking for a holiday, please plan well in advance. Otherwise, you're going to end up paying a lot more and burning a hole in your pocket. For hotels, it's exactly the opposite. So for sure, cream that last bit of corporate demand that you can get if you're in a business location, because especially analyze your compression very well.
Can you define compression for the viewers?
So very simply put, compression is any day that your occupancy for either your hotel or your submarket or your market crosses 90%. So above 90% occupancy is compression. So you're getting compressed. Now, you can bucket your own hotel, and this is an exercise that any of you can do. Bucket your own hotel and then your market into occupancy buckets. So let's say there's 60 to 70%, 70 to 80%, 80 to 90, and 90 and above. Analyze how many nights are there in each for the past 3 years, and then look at the rate for each bucket. And then calculate the premium that you're able to get for the above 90 compression dates and compare that to what your market's doing. And it's very fascinating. And I'll give you an example of Goa. That premium in Goa that compression nights are able to generate is 50% compared to the ADR on a less than 70% occupancy day. But in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, that premium is 70% higher.
That's even higher.
Yes.
That's counterintuitive.
No, I think it's fact, because the person who is traveling to Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore has such less options to choose if the city is sold out that they're willing to pay that premium, and hoteliers are able to cream that very well. So that's a good analysis piece for you as hoteliers.
So how do you convince a hotelier who says that I know the market already, I don't need data?
Just ask them 10 questions on their market, open up your product, like my product, and listen to what they say. And 9 out of 10 times, if they don't have the right visibility into the right data, you're going to have an occasion to prove them otherwise. And when you actually are sitting remotely and telling an owner or an operator about their own market and giving them information about their own market, they 9 out of 10 times will agree that, okay, I'm learning something new and this is probably valuable. So just ask them questions on their market. If an owner tells me that I know how my market's performing and I have friends in the industry, and that's the rudimentary way of, it's like the story of the fish. How big is the fish you caught? I will call you and ask you, which is how much occupancy have you done? And you'll say this big. Someone else calls you, you say this big. And by the end of the day, you have a shark. But that's not factual data, right? So many times, yes, you may have friends here and there and people talk. Yes, it's not legal to share confidential data and it's protected, etc. But it happens, face it or not. And that's the biggest challenge that we're trying to solve for. But at the same time, just ask them questions, and 9 out of 10 times you'd be surprised that a person who says they know the market, not really. Yeah.
Do you think that AI is going to disrupt STR in a massive way?
In a positive way, yes, and it's already doing it. I mean, I personally use, and we have, STR collects 2 types of data, right? One is performance data right from the hotels, but we also have a research team. And I feel AI is really the new way to search, but it's also equally important to fact check a few spot checks after that. The second part is from an efficiency standpoint. Like, I cannot thank any LLM I use, and I have pro subscriptions to Perplexity, to ChatGPT, to Claude, and all of these, and I use different things for different things. Like Claude, for example, is more creative. ChatGPT is also more creative. Perplexity is more search-based. Research is better. So depending on what you use it for, it's very interesting, and it's already starting to reap its benefits, because to your point of efficiencies, I can do, and I hope my boss doesn't watch this, but I can do 10x the work that I used to be able to do without AI, now with. And it's made everyone more efficient. So, yeah.
What has been the most rewarding project so far?
Most rewarding project? can I say two things? One, I'll just call back to in ITC when I did the small project that
With the mini printer.
yes, with the micro printing and made a booklet and GDS bookings and how to increase that. That was, looking back, the single most pivotal project that I've done because it brought me to where I'm privileged enough and grateful enough to be now. And I think the second one is something of a surprise that came in last year where STR provides data to global organizations. And I won't take the name of the organization, but there's an organization that puts out metrics at a country level on whether tourism index is going up or going down. And India didn't unfortunately rank as high as certain other countries. And the Ministry of Tourism invited me for a roundtable to really strategize and add value to tourism initiatives. And it was so refreshing to see that the ministry is taking the right steps to first identify the problem without assuming what the problem is and trying to tackle it. There was really a good session on identifying the problems and then a data-driven approach to then solve for it. So that was the second most. Very honorable for myself to be part of that. Very honored for myself to be part of that. But I was super grateful.
A hotelier you admire.
The thing is, with working with a company that works with almost every brand or operator or owner, I've learned many small things from many great leaders. But I feel, and it may be a very cliched thing to say, and I'm not saying this to hopefully get a promotion, but my direct reporting manager, Matthew, based in Australia, I just really admire his like 3 or 4 things, right? One, as a leader, he has the difficult task of managing people across Singapore, Japan, and Australia. And it's not easy because it's 3 different corners. It's the region, he calls it a smiley because it's in the shape of a smile. Used to be that. And he has that task, which is not easy. But he also has 2 kids, has a dog, and spends so much valuable time with his family. And I don't know how he manages his time and prioritizes his work, but there's not been a single day where if there's something important that comes up that I need to run past him, he's not available. So that's one excellent reason why I admire him. The second is, I feel as a leader, it's important for you to be okay with being challenged by your reportees. And some of the conversations we have, and I think it's a cultural thing in my company as well, there's very open receptiveness to being challenged on your opinion, even if you are above the hierarchy of the person who's challenging you. And that, I think, allows a lot of openness in the culture of the organization. And some of the conversations we have, I completely disagree with what he says. And some of them, he completely disagrees with what I say. But we reach a mutual understanding on why one is better than the other. And now we've started using it more often than we should because we sometimes just challenge each other to get ourselves more confident with what we're pitching. Right. So, yeah, so he's one of the awesome hoteliers that I know. And then, of course, there's Jesper as well. And I think I've been very fortunate to have good leaders that I've worked with and that I continue to work with. And they've shaped a lot of things that I implement and try to implement and try to learn from them on a day-to-day. So, yeah, it's been awesome.
What's your dream job?
Not having one. Actually, that's exactly not what I don't like. Okay, so my wife will say the same and agree with this, that on a weekend, if I have some free time, I need to be doing something. So my dream job would be to probably always have something to mentally occupy my mind. And I don't care what it is, but it needs to give me continuous stimulus. I don't know if that's a good thing because I sometimes find it hard to disconnect and do nothing.
You read the book Dopamine Nation?
No. What is that book? Tell me about it.
So you get addicted to the dopamine.
Okay. And is
like,
that
so
why?
I also like you. Like I love being in the motion. Or must have read Ikigai maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. So like it's like basically the happiness of being busy.
Okay.
So sometimes.
So I'm not weird. That is the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. It's a thing that's very sort of yeah.
Oh, speaking of books, can I just recommend, because that's one of the things I've learned a lot from, especially given that I moved to Singapore. And like, I report to an Australian boss who reports to a Swedish boss based in Singapore, who reports to a South African based in London, who reports to an American. That was the hierarchy in my organization for the longest time. It's called Culture Map, The Culture Map. And it's a fantastic book. There's about 8 different tracks that are identified, like decision making, communication. There's basically, when you deal with different cultures, it's very often that you will have disagreements. But it's easy to take those disagreements as personal, but it's actually not a personal disagreement. It's actually a cultural difference that's leading to that. And in my office itself, and having to handle Southeast Asia, for example, and working in an American company, my internal decision making is very different from if I'm talking to a Thai family office and trying to convince them on the value that the CoStar product has. It's very different. So you should understand and think of it this way, right? Like, we're having this conversation now. Imagine we were having the same conversation with a screen in between us and you can't see the other person. You would take away a lot lesser than what I'm saying to you right now when I'm seeing you and actioning and talking to you with open arms, for example. But the same thing would probably be perceived as too out there in certain cultures. Sometimes in India, for example, if I say, hey, I need this done by tomorrow, it means 3 weeks later, because this timing and scheduling is different here in India. Whereas in the US, if your manager tells you, okay, I need this by tomorrow, he probably needed it yesterday. So, or he actually just needs it exactly tomorrow. So there's low context communication, high context communication. So culture map. And I think the hotel industry benefits from having exposure to different cultures because you see international travelers come in, and it's very important. That's a book that I would highly recommend, Culture Map.
Lovely. Thank you, Karan. Thank you. And it was lovely having you on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Anant. It's been awesome being here. Thanks for having me.